let's begin with a quick show of hands. Who here has an amazing app idea that you just haven't built out yet? Hi. So we've all been there. The biggest roadblock is friction. The endless setup, configurations, and the boilerplate. And that's what we're eliminating today with agents. By the end of this talk, you'll know exactly how to bring your idea to life. My name is Sandhya. I'm a product manager at Android Studio, and I'm here with Trevor Johns and Simona Milanovic. All right. Gemini in Android Studio helps you at every stage of the app development lifecycle. Let's take a look at some practical examples through this agenda. Firstly, we'll look at how to prototype an app, how to make it adaptive, and how to add a new feature. Then, let's look at maintaining and testing your app. And finally, let's look at how to intelligently integrate your existing workflow tools into Studio and how to extend Gemini with new skills. All of the features we'll be looking at today apply to both new projects as well as existing large code bases. All right, let's start by beginning a new app idea to life. Gemini in Android Studio is here to help you bring your idea to reality. It used to take months, if not weeks, and a whole team of engineers to get your app idea off the ground. Today, even a solo entrepreneur with just a little bit of time can build a working prototype. So you can use all of that time to continue to refine your app and build the best experience for your users. Let me show you. All right. I've got a great new idea for a new fitness app. We don't need to go into all of the details here, but let's just say it will be a big hit when it finally launches as part of my new startup. We'll start with the basics, though. I need an app that can track my steps, my daily fitness goals, and my workout sessions. With Gemini in Android Studio's new project agent, I can build an entire complete Android application with just a single prompt. I can provide as much or as little detail as I want. And even if you're building a complex app manually, it can still set up all of the scaffolding for you. Behind the scenes, we take advantage of agent mode to plan and build out your app. It takes into account all of the Android best practices and the official recommended tech stack to build out the app for you. All right, let's see it in action with a demo. All right, let's cut to the demo. Sweet. I'm in Android Studio. I'll kick off a new project. Click on Create with AI and put in my prompt. Build me a fitness tracker app with a step counter. All right. All right, we'll give it a name. All right. Okay. And while that's loading, let me tell you about the agent mode's build, fix, verify loop. Every time the agent writes code, it compiles and makes sure that there are no errors. If there are errors, it continues to iterate on it until the errors are fixed. Therefore, the feedback loop is built into the agent mode. All right. Oh, sweet. OK. So the agent mode is back, and here you can see it's come up with a project brief. So it's given the app a cool name, and it's come up with a list of features, real-time step tracking, a progress dashboard, and adaptive layout support as well. And if I scroll up, I can see the mocks. That looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and approve this. It also shows the technical stack. Here you can see it's using Jetpack Compose with Material 3 and so on. All right, you can continue to iterate on this product brief, but I'm going to go ahead and approve it. All right? And when I approve it, it comes up with a detailed implementation plan. All right? So it's listing out the features, the tech stack again, and then here are the implementation steps. And this is a checklist, and every time it completes a step, you'll see that it marks it as complete. All right? So it's setting up the theme and the tracking logic, the adaptive UI, and eventually it will also do a run and verify and make sure that it's working as intended. And you can see how it's loading all the information, making the tool calls, and so on. I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. This can take up to 10 minutes, so in the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly switch to another project that I kicked off earlier today with the same prompt. All right, let's try to build and run that. All right, and drum roll. All right, there you have it. So there you have our fitness tracker app, and you can go ahead and continue to refine and iterate it. All right, let's cut back to the slides. In addition, when you provide a paid Gemini API key, the agent can come up with a beautiful design mock before starting implementation. It uses an image generation model like Nano Banana for this. And the result is a much more visually stunning app with much higher fidelity. All right. In addition, agent mode also has first-class support for large screen devices. It intelligently scaffolds your project with the components, the layouts, the navigation that are optimized for large screen devices. Devices like Chrome OS devices, tablets, and foldables from the get-go. All right? And behind the scenes, you can see that it refers to all of the adaptive guidelines to make this happen. And it has additional logic to test out your app on large screen devices or other emulators you have available as well. Simply configure the devices that you need, and the new project agent can test it out on those devices for you. All right. So now I've built the app, but I want to set up a database so that I can log my workouts. And I also want to set up an authentication so that I can add profiles for my family members, right? So how am I going to do that? Simply ask agent mode to connect to Firebase. It now includes all of the knowledge required to connect to Firebase services. Okay. And with that, you will have a full end-to-end working app, and that's robust and has the full stack experience as well. All right. So with all these new agent mode capabilities, you'll find yourself reaching for the AI more often. And we're really excited to tell you that the agent can now multitask. Until recently, you can only ask the agent for one task at a time, but we've completely redesigned the app from the ground up so that it can support multiple conversations in parallel. All right. And while you're waiting for a really long-running task, you can simply click on the plus icon and ask a quick sidebar question, and then you can switch back and forth with the history icon. All right. As your code base gets larger, you'll want to explore more and more complex tasks. And planning mode is a really good fit for those complex tasks. Planning mode architects the entire solution and a detailed implementation plan before it writes a single line of code. So you can go ahead and refine that until you're satisfied before you let it proceed. All right, so now I've built my app, it's adaptive now, and I've added the backend capabilities. And I'm now ready to publish this app to the Play Store, to the Google Play internal test track. We're now making it easier for you to publish your apps to the internal test track. Simply create a new app and publish it to the test track directly from Android Studio. You can now upload your new releases to Play Console test track side. We're making the whole process seamless and so much easier for you to directly go from app creation to publishing when you're ready. All right. Now that we've built our app, we are now ready to extend it and add more features to it. For that, I'll pass the stage on to my colleague Trevor to walk us through an example.
Thank you, Sandhya. So you just saw how Gemini and Android Studio can help you plan and build a new application. But we're also here to help you throughout your application lifecycle, including extending features, maintaining your app, ensuring test coverage, and optimizing your application for production. So let's take a look at some of that. Jumping back to our fitness app, let's jump forward a bit in time. We're further along in development, and we want to start adding new features to our application. So in this case, let's say that we want to add support for Health Connect. This would let us share a step count with other apps and retrieve workout data from other apps on the system the user might be using. Let me show you how you can implement this feature using planning mode. And I'm also going to add a second twist here. We jumped forward a bit in time, so we now have a development team, which means we have a bug tracker for everyone to collaborate on. So we can have agent mode autonomously work on this feature directly from our project's bug tracker. To accomplish this, we're going to turn to MCP, the Model Context Protocol. This is a standardized mechanism for extending AI agents with new tools and new capabilities. You can think of it just like a USB-C port for a wide range of AI integrations. MCP handles service discovery and provides a standardized way to package and send rich, structured context into Gemini. Android Studio's MCP support means there's a rich ecosystem of tools available today that can integrate with Gemini and Android Studio. You can directly connect to any MCP server, but to help you get started, we also now include a curated collection of MCP servers for common integrations. And you can find that under Studio settings in AI MCP server. You can also go and specify custom MCP servers using JSON. Once you've configured your MCP servers, agent mode will automatically invoke them as needed while executing your prompts. So here, for this project, we're going to go and connect the GitHub MCP server to our project. And then with our bug tracker connected, we can directly delegate issues to Gemini. So for example, we could ask it to read, assess, or fix a particular bug, testing it before checking it back in. So in this case, we're going to give it a feature request that's stored in our project's bug tracker. And with planning mode, Gemini will be able to examine all of our project's files and come up with a concrete plan to address those requirements in the feature request for us. So just as before, you can always edit and refine it before you approve it. You're always in the driver's seat. So let's take a look at how planning mode and MCP work in action. And I have my new project set up here. Once again, we're going to go and try and connect it to Health Connect, so that way we can share our step data. But first things first, we want to connect it to our GitHub GitHub issue tracker. So we're going to go into Settings. We're going to go to MCP servers. And I already have the GitHub MCP server installed, but I'm just going to go ahead and enable it here. And very quickly here, I'm just going to jump over to Chrome, and you can see here that we have our feature request written up in GitHub issues as issue number 1. It's a bit more lengthy than the short prompt that we used to create the project earlier, and that's OK. Gemini can adapt to work with tasks at any level of complexity. So we're going to go ahead and delegate this bug over to Gemini. So I'm going to jump back over to Android Studio. You can see here it's now connected to GitHub, and I'm going to say work on issue number 1. I'm going to switch over to planning mode, and we're using Gemini 3 for this. All right. Now that I've sent that, you can see it's going to begin examining our project. We're going to allow that. And you'll see in just a moment here, it's now connecting to the GitHub issue tracker, and we're going to allow that as well too. And it's researching everything that's needed to go and work on this project. In just a moment here, it'll come back with a implementation plan that, once again, we're able to edit and refine if we want. And while Gemini works on this, you can see it's starting to do the research here, but I'm going to jump ahead forward in time so you can see the result. All right. So here it's completed researching the issue. It's jumped forward a little bit more in our task list, identified what steps it needs to take, and written up that implementation plan for us, explaining exactly how it's going to go about implementing this feature. We can read through this, and if we want to change anything, we can, of course, go in here and have a conversation with Gemini to go and iterate on this implementation plan. But I like this, so we'll just go ahead and say proceed. and it'll begin working on our feature for us. All right? Well, that works. Let's go ahead and cut back to the slides. All right, so now that we've added some more features to our app, let's talk about how Agent Mode is able to help with testing and maintaining our application so that we're able to ship with confidence. Ensuring test coverage is, of course, vital, not only for your application's quality, but now to provide agents with information they need to determine whether or not their tasks are successful. We've been working on leveraging Gemini's multimodal capabilities to help write end-to-end tasks with journeys. This is a new feature that we launched last year to allow you to write UI tests that dynamically adapt to your application's changing UI. We have some journey tests that we've added to our application, and journeys allows Gemini to intelligently interact with our app in real time, following these steps to give you tests that dynamically adapt as your app's UI changes across time or across devices. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and you can see that one of my tasks has unfortunately failed there. But now, with new agent mode integration for journeys, it has the ability to interactively fix test failures as well. So you can see here that it's offered to either modify my journeys test, assuming that something in my UI has changed and we just need to change some of our test statements. Or if we're confident that the test is correct and we found a bug, we can ask journeys to go and use agent mode to to autonomously fix the underlying code that caused the fault. We've also added support for executing journeys directly from the command line with Android CLI. So this includes bundled AI skills for creating and executing journeys. We've also added support for invoking journeys via Gemini CLI. This also allows us to use journeys in headless environments like in a CI server. This means that you're able to run journeys tests automatically on every pull request, highlighting when your app's behavior has diverged from your original test specification. So let's take a look at this here. We can see that we have Gemini CLI, or you could do this with anti-gravity CLI as well now, invoking a journey test with the help of Android CLI in the background. And just like with Android Studio's agent mode, Gemini has visibility into the execution test results and can offer to heal a malformed test or directly fix any underlying bugs. All right. We also have integration with App Quality Insights. That's your direct view into production data, aggregating crash reports from production sources like Play Vitals or Firebase Crashlytics. Once a crash is identified, Gemini is able to analyze the user's stack traces and suggest potential code fixes. The power of agent mode means it now goes further than a suggestion. It's able to iterate on these proposed fixes and test them to confirm that the underlying bug has been resolved before you start coding. This automates the entire validation loop. All right. Jumping forward a little bit more in time here as we get ready to release our app to users on Google Play, we also want to make sure that our app is up-to-date and performant. Modern apps rely on third-party libraries to implement critical features, and these libraries take advantage of other libraries themselves, which can quickly make dependency management a challenging task, especially for large code bases. Upgrading one dependency can often pull in a web of seemingly unrelated changes. We've heard from developers just how time-consuming these updates can be, and Gemini and Android Studio is able to help you with that as well. So we're able to automatically apply dependency updates for you. If you just right-click in your version catalog file, you can ask Gemini to update all of your dependencies. Gemini will then analyze your version catalog, identify any stale library versions, and proceed to inspect the documentation for those libraries to identify any likely changes that need to be made to your source files. And now with agent mode, we're able to build and test your app to make sure everything works successfully after the migration. So let me show you that in action here with a demo. All right, so we now have our application that we're getting ready to, or that we'd like to update. And you can see here I have a whole range of dependencies that are out of date. So I can just right-click here, go to AI, and say Update Dependencies. It'll then begin scanning through my version catalog, identifying which dependencies need to be updated. And in just a moment here, it'll begin iterating on that. But for the sake of time, we'll jump forward to the completed version of that. And you can see here that it's gone through, analyzed my project, began reading through the release notes of all of the different libraries that we needed to update, and began changing the underlying Kotlin code to make sure that everything is able to be updated successfully. And at the end here, you'll see it deploying that to the emulator and testing it to make sure everything works successfully. All right, we'll go ahead and jump back to slides here. So we talked about updating third-party library dependencies, but you also need to upgrade your AGP version over time. We now have the AGP Upgrade Assistant built into Studio, which can provide deeper assistance with AGP migrations, again, using agent mode to help migrate to the new AGP DSL. To take advantage of this, we leverage a new feature called Android Skills. For supported workflows like this one, all we need to do is ask agent mode for help updating our AGP version, and the skill is invoked automatically. We'll also enable planning mode here, and as before, Gemini and Android Studio takes some extra time to think about the project and comes up with its recommendations and next steps. Again, we're using Android Skills here to enable this, which is a powerful new capability that we've just added to Android Studio, bringing deeper knowledge of a wide range of Android best practices into the Gemini environment, even for topics outside the model training cutoff. To give you a deep dive on how Android skills work and how they augment agent mode, let me turn the stage over to my colleague Simona.
So, delegating your AGP upgrade is one of many things that can now be handled for you using a powerful combination Gemini and Android Studio with one of our own Android skills. And we have a lot more of those to share with you, but first we have to understand what exactly are skills, how do they work, and how does Studio leverage this new capability? Let's use one as an example. Skills are the open standard markdown files, skills.md, that represent modular instruction sets for AI agents and tools. They provide technical specifications for a task, grounding the LLMs with up-to-date and domain-specific information. They enable execution of specialized workflows and expertise through added knowledge and context. So how do you use them in your day-to-day work? Generally, you fetch skills from a trusted source, and you place them into a dedicated repository, like a local project root or user home. Using Android Studio as an example, skills can go to a workspace-specific or a global directory. After that, agents are aware of all of the present skills by keeping a list of the skills metadata and sending it to the LLM on every prompt. When the user sends a prompt, or you, the LLM tries to match the skills metadata and the description with an executed task, and then find and activates the most suitable skills. Skills are designed to trigger automatically, so there's no need for you to manually manually search and attach them and force their usage, but you can, of course, if you want to. So now that we kind of understand the basics, how do we make the most out of this concept for Android development? You heard about it in the developer productivity keynote, but to better support you and your Android development with AI, we launched the official Android Skills, a dedicated repository of AI-optimized instructions to help models better understand and execute specific patterns that follow our best practices and guidance on Android development. To install skills easily and update them regularly, we recommend using Android CLI, so check out its documentation for more. You can also check out the GitHub repo for the latest updates. With Android Skills, we kind of wanted to tackle a few challenges we realized happen when working with LLMs. LLMs often lack context on the newest Android frameworks and changes due to their training cutoff date. If you ask it to migrate a legacy navigation, they often won't know anything about the latest frameworks. Skills allow us to deliver these changes and updates to AI tools instantly. Similarly, you might ask LLMs to analyze a project setup, and it can often provide a result that's unstructured and not always really fully helpful. Android Skills guide LLMs in executing the more complex but really important workflows while also following our best practices. Traditional documentation can be descriptive, conceptual, and high level. And while that's perfect for our learning, it can be less performant with LLMs that require precise and actionable instructions. Standard documentation teaches humans how to think and the whys, while skills tell AI how to execute something, what and how to do it. Knowing all that, our focus is on publishing Android Skills, where our testing showed that the LLMs need more grounding and steering. So in workflows such as AGP9 and XML to compose migrations, adding navigation 3 to your project, migrating from nav to analysis of your R8 config, enabling edge-to-edge support, and a lot more. So Android skills can be roughly split into procedural and specialized workflows. So something that demonstrates a step-by-step custom process to complete a specific task, like the R8 config analysis. They can also be referenced and knowledge-based, so serving as a collection of resources or pointers to other supporting files, grounding the LLMs with more knowledge and expertise, like how the edge-to-edge skill teaches the LLM how to implement support for it. And they can be hybrid, so integrating both procedural and knowledge-based elements. The XML to compose migration skill does exactly that. Android skills are supported by Android Studio and Android CLI, but are also designed to be reusable across any AI tool or agent of your choice that has support for skills. So Google Anti-Gravity, AI Studio, or any other. For Android Studio, a selected subset of Android skills are directly preloaded within by enabling them in settings. These are available at Agent Startup and get activated automatically, so no need for you to manually download and activate them. You can, of course, add more skills manually by checking out from our repository or Android CLI and placing them in the dedicated directories for Studio. You can check out the documentation for full information. Android CLI also offers full integration with Android skills. You can install them to your dedicated directories for specific agents. You can also specify which skills you want. You can remove them, list them, find them, and so on. You can even tweak or write your own. But if you're going to write your own, let me share a few tips that we have from our own experience of writing Android skills. Don't insist on skills for user journeys that the LLM is already pretty good at. Skills are meant to supplement the default knowledge of an LLM. So forcing skills for tasks it already knows, it adds unnecessary overhead. So rely on testing thoroughly to figure out which scenarios require skills. Don't use LLMs to generate skills from scratch without providing any additional sources or knowledge. If an LLM already knows a topic and can generate a skill for it using its default knowledge, it doesn't need a skill. Think about what to add to agents.md and what to add to skill.md. The entire content of an agent.md is sent as context for every user prompt, while skills are activated on demand, so only when they're needed. Good skill candidates are usually brand new APIs or version behavior changes, so information that is so recent that the LLMs know very little about it. So things like custom domain and specific workflows are also good candidates, large procedural migrations, etc. Less is more. Find the minimum scope and the length of a skill that provides the maximum benefits. Generally, succinct skills perform better than the very, very lengthy ones, because LLMs start forgetting if you throw too much context their way. And finally, always use skills from trusted sources and validate them before running, so sources like Android CLI. Let's look at one particularly handy Android skill for a larger task. So if we're talking about opportunities to modernize an app, the first thing that comes to mind is migrating from XML to Compose. As you might have already heard in What's New in Android, we are now Compose first. This means that we're now advising you to write new code and features in Compose, as well as migrate old XML views, because views are moving into maintenance mode. Basically, we recommend you write all of your Android UI in Jetpack Compose across all form factors. To support you in this, we've published an XML to Compose migration skill to better guide any agents and tools of your choice in this migration effort. So now we're going to see one of these skills in action. OK, we can cut to the demo. So here we have one of our older samples called Sunflower that's written entirely in views. So before we do anything, what I'm going to start is actually kick off the migration first, because it takes a while. And I'm going to say migrate a layout from XML to Compose. I'm going to let it run in the background, and then we're going to come back to it at the very end. So as we see, we have Sunflower here all in views, and we're going to use our skill to migrate it to Compose. So when we first started testing the migration with LLMs from XML to Compose, we realized that the LLMs were already pretty good at doing the basics, so like mapping the basic layouts from XML to Compose, or doing recycler view to lazy mapping, etc. So those those basics that you kind of encounter in every migration. But what it was struggling with was defining a very specific workflow that is consistent throughout many runs. And that is exactly what we decided to focus on with our skill. So we provide a recommended workflow that is divided into substeps that we think apply across all code bases. And we also define criteria for things like success or validation or analysis of your code base. And we also ground it with supporting files which follow our best practices and the latest, for example, Compose versioning and changes that come from these new APIs. So aside from that, some of the most important things to notice in this skill are the open standard specifications or requirements that are needed to make this a skill. At the very top, we see this YAML metadata that is always found on top that contains two most important fields, which are the name and the description. It also needs to, the main skill file needs to be named skill.md in uppercase. And aside from that, the only other requirement, well, it is kind of a requirement, is to have at least some content in the body of the skill. Everything else is optional. You can write whatever is needed for the skill to succeed or the agent to do a good task with it. But most commonly in skills, you might find things like objectives or goals defined at the very top, constraints or restrictions or requirements for executing the skill, summaries or step-by-step processes and subtasks, things like code snippets, supporting files, do's and don'ts, and all of these. Those are the most common ones. OK, let me just check the agent to see if it's running still. OK. That was a spoiler. OK, cool. So now that we kind of went over the focus of our skill, I also want to say that breaking down any larger tasks, so things like big migrations or big refactors, breaking them down into smaller subtasks generally provides much better results with LLMs because they're able to follow a much more methodical way that is consistent across many runs. In that case, using that as our guidance, we realized that there are some steps that are applicable for more code bases. So things like identifying how to identify the optimal XML layout for as a candidate, things like how to create a plan properly or capture the initial XML view, setting up Compose and its theming, and many other steps that you can see from here. So this workflow is kind of sturdy enough and generalized enough so that it works with a variety of code bases. But with this skill, as with any other, it's always a good practice for you to customize it and tweak it to your own production code base. So add pointers or details for the LLMs that are unique to your own code pattern. So for example, if we wanted to tweak this, we could say use only layouts from feature module X and constrain it to just a specific module. We can say that we don't actually want to set up Compose because we've already done it. Or we can say that for migrating theming, we can provide our own references. So references like design, system, markdown. So something that comes from our own internal documentation that helps us point the LLMs in the right way. An important note, though, here is if you do decide to tweak an existing skill that you pulled from a source, do make sure that you always remember to kind of extract it somewhere else, rename it, put it in a different location. Just make it different from the original source of truth, because if you do a bulk update of your skills, your custom tweaks might get actually overwritten. OK, so that's kind of, you get the idea about this. You can see that we have this main skill.md here, and it provides all of the summaries for individual subtasks. But you can also see that our skill directory contains a lot more additional supporting files. And these are any files that supplement the original skill.md with additional context, additional knowledge, other supplemental markdowns, scripts, assets, so anything that the model needs to perform this task more successfully. So One important note to say about this is, as you can see, we provide a lot of supporting files from our main skill MD, but we're always very explicit about when and how the LLM should use these files. The reason for that is because we want to ensure that the LLM is actually able to activate these supporting files on demand as well. So not load them all at the very start, but use them only for specific tasks. And not only that, but it's able to actually also skip specific steps when it realizes it doesn't need to perform them. So in that case, for example, the LLM would actually skip this step of setting up compose dependencies and activation of this file because it realized it's already been set up. So let's look at one of these in more detail. So for example, we have the identify optimal XML candidate. So you can see that this subtask was extracted in a supporting file because we wanted the LLM to skip it if the user actually provides and points us to the layout that they want migrated. Aside from that, it also means that we shorten the main skill MD length and optimize for better context usage overall. You'll notice that the language in this supporting file, but also across any other skills that we have, is very concise, it's very procedural, it avoids usages of vague and subjective words, or if we do decide to use a subjective word, which is the word optimal, we always ensure to provide the exact criteria on what makes this subjective word more measurable for the LLM. Okay, I think that's kind of all of the basics that I wanted to cover for the skill. I think the most important part now that's left is for you to check it out, try it out, provide feedback to us, and see how well it performs. And with that in mind, I'm going to jump into the actual results. So I can see here that the skill MD got activated immediately, and it went into the activation of the supporting file for it as well, once it realized that that's the first step it requires. There's a lot more information here, but I want to see the results. Okay, so it decided to activate fragment plant detail, and it migrated it into a plant screen composable. Okay, let's get these two a quick comparison. And let's see how they look. Okay, so it's done a pretty good job overall. There are some tweaks here and there that can be modified manually, but I'm pretty happy with this as it looks like now because it's meant to do exactly what it's done, which is to provide the scaffolding for you, take over the more repetitive parts of Android development, and let you take over the more fun ones and build on top of it. So this way, hopefully, layout by layout, it gets you closer to compose first. And you can check out this skill as many other more that we have through Android CLI. It's integrated in Studio as well, so you can try it out already and let us know what you think. So with that in mind, I'll hand it over to Sandhya to do a recap for us.
All right, folks, we covered quite a bit of content today, and I'm tasked with making sure that you remember all of it. Let's do a quick recap. All right, as a reminder, everything you saw today works not only with the Gemini models, but you can bring your API key for other foundational models like the Anthropic and the OpenAI models as well. You can also use a local model or an open source model like Gemma as well. No matter what model you prefer, the AI tools in Android Studio are here for you, and they'll integrate seamlessly with the model of your choice. All right. So today, we saw how Gemini and Android Studio can help supercharge your developer productivity and help you at every step of the app development lifecycle. First, we looked at how to prototype a new app with the new project agent. Then we saw how to make it adaptive and to test it on large screen emulators. We also saw how to add a new feature using features like planning mode, using MCP connections to maintain and test your app. We also looked at how to maintain your app with app quality insights and how to test it with journeys testing. Let's see. And finally, we saw how to extend Gemini with how to extend Gemini with new skills as well. All right. Yes. So all the features you saw today are available in the latest Canary version of Android Studio, and they're coming soon to a stable version. To get started, download the latest version of Android Studio and start integrating Gemini into your workflow. To learn more, please head to d.android.com/studio. Thank you.